Hello, welcome to Animal Audit Corner. Hello, welcome to Animal Audit Corner. Brooks and Gibbs on Scientology to take back a street, and Mirjam sits down with Mark Turi all day show. In Growing Up in Scientology, Aaron Smith Levin is known for having a good sense of value when it comes to having the strength of. He would have the knowledge to take on that evil organization and win every battle they have for him. Scientology never has a chance. Aaron is a big Scientology's deepest, darkest secrets at that blue building. He talked about Scientology war on Clearwater, Florida, and their citizens in that town. The organization declare war on the entire city of Clearwater when they have resubmitted their requests to the city's permit, just to the city to just hand them the entire street to them. Is bullying the city into giving them the street without no changes. They are practically threatening everyone with civil and criminal actions against Clearwater. Brooks Gibbs had a call to action to take back the streets from Scientology with the Save the Garden, Save the Garden. Now, here is a clip.
Those individual examples show.
Okay, sorry, everybody. I just lost the clip. So we'll just keep on going. Now, a petition will be taken through the neighborhood to sign it. But however, they are not going to petition it online. Now, when you sign the petition, you, as the Clearwater residents, will vote on that issue and not the city. So people will be passing around those petitions. Once you sign it, and there's enough petitions, you, the Clearwater resident, will decide what to do. However, Scientology owns 85% of Clearwater. When the secretly bought it around 2017. They bought out 85% of clear water. David Miscavige and Tom Cruise said they were going to build a family complex. Tom Cruise told everyone that there was going to be they are going to be building a movie theater for families to go to. But however, it's been sitting at the plot ever since, and it's been empty. It's been collecting dust ever since. That was 10 years ago. Today, Clearwater is now a ghost town and has been sitting there for a decade now, and it's still sitting there empty. They are now practicing. You know what? Everybody, let me turn on the light. The lights in front of me weren't helping much, but turn on this light. Okay, they are now dangling their entire town in front of everyone's faces to blackmail the city into giving them what they want. That's the reason why the entire city is just sitting there. They're using it to dangle that carrot in front of the city's nose, saying, okay, you got to give me this and we'll stop building. Of course, we all know that Ryan Cotton and Mark Menino is in the pocket of David Miscavige. Now, why are they in the back of his pocket now? It could be that he paid them to vote with him, or he has information on both those two. Well, whatever the reason is, we all know that money talks. Everyone who's the little guy doesn't. Trading cash, or David has a dirty secret of theirs and is buying their silence and just blackmailing them and scaring them into giving it. Either way, they're in David Miscavige's back pocket. But either way, that town is sitting empty, and the people are in danger of losing Cleveland's. Overall, Brooks Gibbs takes on Scientology to take back Cleveland Street. Then nevertheless, the petition will be taken through the neighborhood to sign, but how they are not going to get people to sign on line. They're going to take the petition around the neighborhood, because we all know Scientology is capable of hacking. They did that to me back in. So I had to literally call Hewlett Packard to actually get me back online. But by the time I got online, everything was deleted. And we all know who contributed to that. Because so far, I had only stories on Scientology on April, the month of April. So it was definitely them. So they're going to take that through the neighborhood to get everybody to sign. Once it's done and there's enough people on there, the vote will go to the people and not the city council. That's how Brooks Gibbs is going to save the garden and turn it into an African American. However, Aaron Smith Levin and Brooks Gibbs is going to win the day and give back that street. And Aaron always knows how to win the day with Scientology. That's right. Aaron always comes out the winner every time he gets arrested. Scientology has no chance with Aaron at the end. Then, in conclusion, Aaron and the Clearwater crew always has the last word, and not David Miscavige would end up throwing a tantrum. And that's what he does, according to whatever was on the internet when they were filming and when Aaron speaks talk, because guess what? He has people from the inside telling him these things, but who Scientology is not going to know, because they're now from Clearwater to up north with Mirjam, who is now sitting with Mark Turi and talked about how he was his days in Scientology. She also had information on the nonprofit organization called Victims Have Voices, which has all the resources for victims of of Scientology. They are around the United States to aid victims of the cult. It has information about contacting the FBI. Now, we all know not all of them is gonna not do anything. There are FBI agents out there that do their jobs. Just like there are police officers out there who will do their job and not listen to Scientology. Proof so, in my hometown of Boston, a police officer chewed out a Scientology when he dragged him down to Karman Ave just for chalk. He did. He let him have it. So there it is. There's a police officer who's actually doing his job. Now, there are more like him that will do the job. They have contracts with a legal organization, has support for people that are victims to Scientology. She had highlighted information about the nonprofit so victims can have those resources. After she gave all the information to all her viewers, she brought in Mark for his interview. Mark is a 42-year-old Canadian native that comes here to the United States. That's how we first came about being in Scientology. In the United States as a tourist in May 2005. When he was in Los Angeles. Around the second week that he was here, he was on Hollywood Boulevard checking out all the sites where he was body routed right into L. Ron Hubbard exhibitations. That was on Hollywood Boulevard on Ivar Avenue, where Scientology was located. Now, he had in the past heard of Scientology, but he didn't have enough information about that organization when he was interesting. Then he went on Willow Ave and went for a personality test where he had bought some of the Dianetics books that he came across. Then, as soon he went back home to Oregon, Toronto, he would join Scientology, where he had become a public Scientologist for a couple of years. Not only that, he had an org around Berlin, and then he became a staff member. Mark had spent 9 months and also spent a couple of months right in San Francisco. Then he left Scientology in May of 2008. That's 3 years in that ridiculous joint. But before he left in 2008, 2 months into being in Scientology, for a few years in the information, he would be in 2 years in the information center, the building that had been a bank before Scientology took it over. Back then, the building was the Garty building. It is a historical landmark in Hollywood. Scientology had bought the building and turned it into their offices for all the businesses and would call it the Class 5 org. He would do so many courses because of the research that he had done. So usually Scientology would stay up reading and studying their. Then when he was doing his research, he fell asleep in his apartment where he had a very small bed. Usually, these guys don't have very good living arrangements. At the Blue Building, we all know there's about 6 bunk beds crammed into a room with other Scientologists, and the bunk beds had 3 per bunk, which is dangerous. Somebody can fall off the top and hurt themselves. If it's the elderly, which they pretty much make them sleep up in that top bunk or the second bunk. And we all know they're not strong enough to handle heights like that. They would either hurt themselves or get left there for days if they survive the fall, because they could die. But he would live 5 minutes from the org that he worked at. So he would walk, which was pretty much an easy walk. But he would spend 10 to 15 hours a day working. So remember yesterday when I showed you the strip? They would make 75 cents per hour. The project, but for him, the walk wasn't bad. But however, everybody who falls asleep while working by working would actually put their heads down on a desk and fall asleep. Scientology is into sleep deprivation. They're usually up all night studying. They won't let them fall asleep. They're usually up studying the books. They read them all through the night. Then they would have to pretty much go to work, and that's the way they have them. And they're aware of it too. And so is David Miscavige. He knows that he is depriving them of. But people who study so many hours that they can't work So they just fall asleep while working. One day, he got up and left because of all the immigration issues. People were working without any kind of visas. And it was illegal. It was legal reasons that he actually left. There were too many people working illegally. And they were also teenagers that were working instead of going to school. Then finally, one day, he decided that he had enough. Once he was in Berlin, he would end up flying to Los Angeles. Then, nevertheless, everyone was writing a bunch of reports on him. And at the end, he had a whole pretty clear folder full of snitches that reported on him. And of course, you know how much of a snitch culture. So many reports were written on him during his last days in Scientology. But then ultimately, he would be in Scientology from 2005 to 2008. Only he had the numbers backwards. That's how exhausted they are. And they end up getting defects from all that studying and from doing a lot of standing. And of course, Natalie ended up having mobility problems because she had problems walking, or was it standing? Anyways, and her daughter, Shelby, ended up getting varicose veins at the age of 16. Now, they are more often are on people from 45 on. They are less likely to be on a teenager. They had her stand for hours. So there would be definitely a defect from that. And Nora suffers from trauma, and she also has ADHD. Now, did she have it in the beginning? I don't know. I don't think she mentioned it. Now, I am not a psychiatrist. But if you don't get treated with ADHD, your mind can actually wander. Now, I'm the person with ADHD, and when I have ADHD, I get a clear picture of anything that's in, and I would easily doze off. That's what people with ADHD do. Or ADD, which is similar, only they're not as hyperactive when they're moving or thinking. don't pay attention. They just not active. Then in conclusion, in 2008, he had taken a flight from Los Angeles and went directly back to Toronto, his real. Now, here's a clip from Mirjam's interview with Mark.
It takes your money and this kind of stuff. So it's hard to ignore those things. And I think my parents were probably just.
All right. And there's the interview. Sorry, I slipped a little bit. So there's Mirjam's interview with Mark. So it's been 38 minutes. So hit the like, press subscribe, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Ciao.